Her son said she wasn't part of his success, then used her money to fake his rise. Linda Holloway, retired accountant and mother, didn't reply. She froze his trust, revoked her co-signature, and erased him from her will, line by line. While he posted about hustle and grit, she posted receipts. He tried to block her out of his story, but she published one he couldn't outrun. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. They said it must have gotten lost, the invitation. The update. Thea should be so proud call, but nothing was lost. The truth was deliberate. Linda Holloway stood barefoot in her kitchen, the scent of percolating dark roast hanging heavy in the air. Morning light spilled through the blinds, striping the granite countertop as she reached for her phone to check the weather. Instead, it was Vanessa's text that blinked up, "Didn't know you weren't invited." He looked so proud. Below it, a photo. There he was, Ethan. Her only son, cap tilted just right, tassel swaying over his brow, arms slung around Janelle and two people Linda didn't recognize. Likely her parents. Chapel Hill's campus buzzed behind them, Carolina blue banners rippling in the breeze. Linda didn't even know graduation had happened. She scrolled through the rest. A carousel of carefully curated memories. Ethan shaking the dean's hand, popping champagne under an archway, kissing Janelle mid-laugh. Every photo tightly framed. Every tag meticulously assigned. She wasn't in a single one. Not even a mention. Her coffee burned bitter in her throat. Linda thumbed through Ethan's Instagram. His caption, "From nothing to something, no handouts. No shortcuts. Just grit." Her fingers curled around the phone like it was a weapon. A tremor passed through her. Not from shock, from precision fury. She tapped out a text, calm but surgical. "Did I miss something?" The response came fast, like he'd rehearsed it. "You're not part of this success." Her thumb hovered over the screen, breath caught like a hitch in a locked drawer. She didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, she set the phone down. Not slammed, just placed. Quietly, deliberately. She moved down the hall, the soft pat of her soles against the hardwood the only sound in the house now. She opened the drawer in her study desk and pulled out the thick blue folder marked Holloway Trust, Ethan. Receipts, ledgers, notarized bank wires, pages of dates, amounts, and signatures. Hers. 4 years of tuition, study abroad in Prague, summer housing in DC for that unpaid think tank internship he bragged about, winter classes, laptop upgrades, professional wardrobe expenses, therapy sessions when he hit a low point sophomore year. All of it. She ran her hand over the folder's surface like it was the spine of something ancient and sacred. She knew what she was holding, and now it would be used differently. That afternoon, the sun dipped lower behind the trees, out back. She sat in the living room without turning on any lights, letting dusk blur the walls. The front door opened. "Linda?" Carla stepped in, carrying a grocery tote and the aura of someone who knew something was wrong before being told. Linda didn't turn. "Vanessa sent me the photos," she said flatly. "Ethan graduated yesterday." Carla exhaled a long, slow breath. "You didn't know?" "No." Linda stood, folders still in hand. "Apparently I'm not part of this success." The silence between them tightened. Carla set the groceries down and took a seat across from her, crossing one leg over the other like a woman preparing for deposition. "He's young, arrogant, confused." Linda shook her head. "No. He's calculated." She opened the folder, "And I'm done funding the lie." Carla's eyes flicked to the trust documents. Her lips parted, but no argument came. Just a simple nod. Time to recalculate. Linda turned toward her study. The hum of her laptop booting up filled the air with its familiar mechanical calm. She navigated through layers of secure files until she reached the recurring disbursement tab, tuition housing monthly transfer. "Ethan." The cursor blinked. Her hand hovered over the mouse. One click. Confirm delete. The screen went blank for a moment, then reset. The payment line was gone. So was the safety net. He walked that stage debt-free. But the receipts were mine. Linda's fingers moved with the precision of a woman who'd balanced ledgers for 30 years. She hadn't touched these documents since the last spring disbursement, but now, under the cold weight of his betrayal, each figure had a pulse. Her home office was dim, save for the glow of the screen and the rustle of page protectors sliding from the Holloway trust binder. The leather cover smelled faintly of cedar and old ink, a scent that used to comfort her. Now it made her jaw tighten. She opened a fresh spreadsheet. Line by line, she rebuilt the financial spine of Ethan's last 5 years. Fall 2020. Tuition, $12,755. Spring 2021. Tuition, $12,755. Off-campus housing 12 months, $15,600. Summer internship housing DC, $4,400. Study abroad program fees, $8,250. On and on it went. Study materials, dorm deposits, a high-spec laptop, flights, therapists, even Uber rides, billed under a professional development category when he needed late-night rides to campus events. Every number was verifiable, every transfer traceable, every signature hers. By the time she reached the end of the ledger, the total stood at $173,042.18, and he called himself self-made. A door creaked open. Carla stepped in quietly, her face framed in hallway shadow, holding 2 mugs of tea. The chamomile curled into the air like a calm before a hurricane. "I figured you'd be up," Carla said, setting one mug beside the laptop. "I'm not angry," Linda murmured, still typing. "I'm measured," Carla finished, folding into the seat beside her. "You never signed away ownership, Linda. Let's be clear. You manage the trust. He's just a beneficiary. That's all he's ever been." Linda's eyes flicked to the successor field on the trust portal. "Then it's time I treat it like that." She navigated to the disbursement tab. One click froze all future transactions. The monthly housing allowance? Frozen. Emergency travel funds? Frozen. And the $5,000 post-grad bonus she had scheduled as a gift for his first apartment? Canceled. Carla nodded, silent approval etched in her stillness. But Linda wasn't done. She opened the trustee management tab. Her hands didn't tremble. They moved like clockwork. One field showed successor trustee, Ethan Holloway. She clicked edit. A drop-down menu appeared. She paused, then typed Chapel Hill Community Literacy Fund, a nonprofit she'd supported in the background for years. Quiet, local, efficient. The kind of place that stretched $1 until it sang. She pressed confirm. The confirmation ping sounded like a gavel. Carla leaned back, watching her sister not just reclaim power, but reposition legacy. "If he thought erasing you would write him a better story," she said. "He underestimated the editor." Linda reached for her tea, let the warmth settle in her chest before setting the mug back down untouched. Her eyes were on the screen again. There was one last piece to move. One more check to cancel, but not from the trust portal. She opened her email, created a new message, typed each word with sterile care. To maingraves@cromleyandfitch.com. Subject: urgent, trust, inheritance, fraud. Her cursor blinked. Then she began to write. He rewrote the story. She sent the footnotes. The article dropped Tuesday morning. A glowing write-up on Cromley and Fitch's internal blog, New Hires to Watch. From humble beginnings to boardroom brilliance. The feature photo was Ethan, tie slightly loosened, sleeves rolled just enough to hint at grit. The opening line praised his grind from the ground up, citing an inspiring self-made journey. Linda stared at the screen, fingers motionless on her keyboard. A subtle buzz of disbelief tightened in her chest. Not loud, but constant, like an old refrigerator motor humming behind everything. He'd turned her sacrifice into fiction. She stood and walked to the hallway closet. From the top shelf, she pulled down a weathered accordion file, edges scuffed from years of use. Inside it was everything he'd forgotten, or chosen to. Invoices, wire transfer confirmations, Lease, co-sign forms. Copies of medical bills from that visit his sophomore year. Signed checks made out to housing offices, tech stores, even a 2-week emergency rental car when Janelle crashed his old Honda. Each one bore the same small cursive signature at the bottom, L. Holloway. Back at her desk, she opened a blank document titled Ethan Holloway, Financial Support Record. Line by line, she began entering the dates and descriptions. August 17th, 2020. Tuition deposit, UNC Semester 1, $6,000, November 9th, 2020. Therapy copay reimbursement, 3 sessions, $240, May 12th, 2022. Airfare to DC internship, $308.74. She wasn't angry anymore. She was focused and frighteningly calm. Carla arrived mid-afternoon with her laptop and legal pad. You'll want to include the housing contract language, she said. No need for pleasantries. I've got every receipt, Linda replied, sliding the compiled ledger across the table. He said he made it from nothing. He just didn't think I kept the paperwork. Carla's eyes swept the list with the quiet expertise of a trial attorney loading her brief. He should have known better. Linda opened a new folder marked Media Misrepresentation. She dragged in screenshots of Ethan's Grindset Instagram stories, the alumni blog profile, and most pointedly, a screen recording of Janelle's TikTok. Janelle, ring light too bright on her cheekbones. Voice syrupy, Ethan has worked so hard. No help, no privilege. Just the two of us building everything from scratch. Linda played it twice, each time her lips pressing into a thinner line. Are they this naive? Carla said flatly. Or are they just used to you being quiet? Linda didn't answer. She was reading a new email alert. From Ethan Holloway, subject. Boundaries, please do not contact me at my job. I've earned my place here. Whatever you're dealing with, keep it separate. I wish you peace, but I need space. Not even a mom. She didn't respond. Instead, she printed his message and added it to the file. Then a chime. Another email. This one was different. From Professor Avery Lynn, subject. Saw the article. Linda, I always knew who was behind Ethan's success. He spoke of struggles, but the puzzle never added up without you. Let me know how I can help. Seriously. Avery. Linda read it twice, hand resting lightly over her collarbone. The smallest crack of air reached her lungs again, not relief, validation. Carla stood behind her now, peering over the files. You ready to send it? Linda clicked into her inbox, attached the compiled documents, and hovered over the draft addressed to Michael Graves. Just as she was about to hit send, her screen blinked, a new incoming message. From Michael Graves, subject, reurgent, trust inheritance, fraud. Can we talk privately about this? Linda's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, vibrating against the marble with a low, rattling urgency. She didn't jump. She was already watching it, waiting. Michael Graves appeared on the screen in stark white letters. She exhaled once, quietly, and picked up. This is Linda Holloway. A pause. Then Mrs. Holloway. This is Michael Graves. Thank you for responding so quickly. I'd like to speak privately, if that's all right. I assumed you would, she said. She stepped into her study and closed the door gently behind her. The office was cold, not from temperature, but tone. The air felt still, clinical. The trust folder remained open on her desk, the documents perfectly fanned out like surgical tools before an operation. I've gone through the packet you sent, Michael began. His voice was calm, but she could hear the tight corners of discomfort. Frankly, I wasn't expecting such detailed documentation. That's because I wasn't supposed to need it, Linda replied, evenly. But when someone builds a brand on false beginnings, the truth needs backup. He didn't interrupt. The education he flaunts, she continued. Paid in full. Every semester, every book, dorm, plane ticket. His summer internships. I covered housing, transit, food, professional clothing. Nearly all of it through a trust under my control. She let the words hang. On her desk, a copy of Ethan's new hires to watch article stared up at her. His smile confident, his quote bold. I built my career from the ground up. No shortcuts. And he never disclosed this to you? Michael asked. No, she said. And worse, he's actively erasing it. You're onboarding a young man who used a lie as a ladder. Another pause, then the sound of shuffling papers on his end. That's not the character we promote, he said. I didn't think so. Linda clicked open her email and sent one final attachment. Carla's legal declaration of Ethan's full financial dependency during his college years. Clean, notarized, and airtight. She watched the email send, then tapped back into her messages. One last thing, she said. This was his last communication to me. She read it aloud. You're not part of this success. Michael went quiet again. Linda could almost hear the soft grind of his teeth through the line. Well, he said at last, I'll be escalating this internally. Until we've had time to assess the situation, we'll pause his onboarding. This touches on ethical representation and possibly donor misrepresentation, given his alumni affiliations. That's all I ask, she said. And Mrs. Holloway, he added, if this moves forward, will you be going public? I'm not interested in spectacle, she replied. I'm interested in accuracy. I won't ruin his future. I just won't keep funding a fiction. Michael gave a short, acknowledging breath. Understood. I'll be in touch within the week. The call ended with no goodbye. Linda placed the phone down carefully and folded her hands in her lap. She didn't smile, didn't cry. She just sat. From the hallway, Carla appeared in the doorframe, a cup of tea in one hand and that legal fire glint in her eye. Well, they're putting him on pause. Carla nodded once. Good. Sometimes consequences need a paper trail. Linda leaned back in her chair, letting the weight of the moment settle. The silence between them was thick, not with regret, but finality. Then the phone vibrated again. She glanced down, a new message. From Ethan, why would HR contact me about a trust? No punctuation, just panic. Ethan's thumb hovered over the login button on his HR portal, jaw tight, pupils sharp and narrow. The page took longer than usual to load, each second drawing a line of sweat across the back of his neck. When it finally flickered to life, the banner that met him wasn't a welcome. Status onboarding suspended, pending internal review. Decision expected 48 hours. His stomach dropped like a faulty elevator. He blinked at the screen, convinced it was a glitch, some temporary system error. Then, in bold beneath the update, reason external misrepresentation concerns. Contact HR liaison immediately. From the couch, Janelle looked up from her phone. You're frowning weird. What happened? They paused my offer. Paused it? She swung her legs off the couch, her voice suddenly high and slicing. What do you mean, paused? He stood abruptly, pacing the narrow apartment floor. They said something about background inconsistencies, misrepresentation. I don't know what that means. Janelle's brows knit. Did you lie about anything? Employment? GPA? No. His voice was defensive, clipped. Everything was solid. Janelle turned her phone toward him. Except your mother just went full documentary mode. Linda's on-gratitude letter was quietly circulating through LinkedIn now, boosted by niche alumni groups and tagged by a few professors. It didn't name, it didn't have to. Below the post, someone had commented, reminds me of that intern story from last year. Said he paid his own way. But wasn't it all trust funded? Ethan's face flushed. She's doing this on purpose. He grabbed his phone, typed furiously, and fired the message off to Linda. Are you sabotaging my job? What the hell is wrong with you? Her reply came a minute later. It's not sabotage, it's truth with receipts. 3 dots blinked, then stopped. That was it. He clenched the phone until the plastic creaked. She's weaponizing the truth. Janelle crossed her arms, the first crack of worry blooming in her eyes. My parents were already telling their friends about your job. This doesn't look good. You said she was out of the picture. She was, he snapped. I cut her off. He stopped. Because somewhere between deleting her number and erasing her from his origin story, he'd forgotten Linda Holloway didn't bark. She filed. That evening, Carla faxed a cease and desist directly to Ethan's temporary onboarding office. The language was clean, final. It accused him of perpetuating false claims of self-sufficiency while benefiting materially from the Holloway family trust. Any further misrepresentation would be considered willful defamation, actionable in court. And Carla didn't bluff. Meanwhile, Professor Avery Lynn submitted a signed letter to Cromley and Fitch's compliance team. It outlined his years as Ethan's academic advisor and quietly acknowledged Linda's unwavering financial and logistical support behind Ethan's every scholastic achievement. The line that stood out most to the review board: he never would have completed his research semester without her funding it outright. The walls were closing in. Ethan sat on his bed in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan turning uselessly above him. Janelle was in the other room on the phone, her voice hushed, sharp. Every few words sounded like apologies. His inbox chimed. Another system email. Subject: follow-up required. Review underway. Body: please be advised, final onboarding decision will be made within 48 hours. Do not contact internal staff during evaluation period. He stared at it, unblinking. 2 days, that's all he had to wait. But Linda had waited longer. She had waited 4 years, quietly, willingly, writing checks while he rewrote her out of his narrative. Now she had flipped the entire process, not by screaming, but by submitting documents, letters, declarations, facts. The letter wasn't angry, it wasn't sharp, it didn't even mention names. And that's what made it powerful. Linda titled it simply, On Gratitude. A quiet essay, just under 500 words, submitted to the Chapel Hill alumni newsletter. She didn't write it with vengeance in mind, but truth. She opened with a story. A young student arriving on campus wide-eyed and overwhelmed. A family member behind the scenes, quiet, steady, cutting checks, packing care boxes, listening at 1 a.m. when it all felt like too much. She never said my son. She never wrote Ethan. But she didn't have to. Anyone who knew the names would know the truth, lived between the lines. Some of us build foundations quietly, she wrote. We don't ask for credit, but we know what we gave. We know what was taken when the story changed to erase us. By Thursday morning, the piece had been reposted by 2 department heads, a career mentor network, and 3 faculty blogs. That afternoon, it hit a closed Facebook group called Legacy Behind the Legacy, run by former Chapel Hill parents who'd funded their kids' college journeys in silence. The comments rolled in. This is the kind of gratitude no one teaches anymore. I feel this in my bones. Her silence had teeth. Linda didn't comment. She just watched. Meanwhile, Janelle lost control of the narrative. An hour after the newsletter circulated, she posted a frantic Instagram story. It's wild how some people try to take credit when they didn't do anything. Buying stuff on raising someone. Miss me with that energy. The font was aggressive. The filter was too sharp. The tone immature, defensive, and unmistakably panicked. Vanessa screenshotted it and sent it to Linda with a single caption. They're cracking. Linda saved the image and archived it. She didn't reply. Janelle posted again the next day, trying to spin it into girl boss territory. Real ones build each other, not tear each other down for clout. But the comments weren't kind this time. Didn't your boyfriend say he was self-made? Funny how the money shows up after the lies get caught. That article wasn't even about you and you still panicked. Janelle deleted the post within 3 hours. Carla, now a ghost on social media, but a hawk behind the scenes, compiled a digital file of everything: screenshots, timestamps, comments, deleted posts recovered via cached sources. If they try to smear you, she told Linda over lunch, we'll have a preloaded exhibit folder ready for court. I don't need a lawsuit, Linda said, sipping unsweet tea slowly. I just need the story to catch up with itself. And it was. At 9:41 p.m. that night, Ethan's inbox pinged with an internal message from Cromley and Fitch. Please report to Human Resources on Friday at 11 a.m. for a formal interview regarding inconsistencies in personal background disclosures and onboarding statements. He stared at it. The room felt suddenly too quiet, the shadows too long. He clicked it again, rereading every word. Outside the window, the streetlights blinked on, automatic, indifferent. He thought charisma would cover it. Paper didn't lie. Ethan adjusted his cuffs twice before entering the glass conference room. The hall smelled like recycled HVAC and stale coffee. His loafers clicked with too much volume against the polished floor, each step sounding like a decision he couldn't undo. Michael Graves sat at the far end of the table, posture straight, hands folded. Beside him, a compliance officer typed quietly into a laptop, her face unreadable. "Ethan," Michael said with a tight nod. "Thanks for coming in." "Of course." Ethan forced a grin, lowering into the chair across from them, happy to clear up whatever's going on. "I think there's been some misunderstanding." Michael didn't smile back. "That's what we're here to assess." The compliance officer turned her screen toward Ethan. A series of documents appeared, scanned PDFs, each watermarked with the Holloway Family Trust insignia. Bank transfers, co-signed lease agreements, signed tuition receipts, one with his name and signature on the beneficiary line. His stomach twisted. Michael's voice was smooth but sterile. "Ethan, you've claimed multiple times, both in formal onboarding documents and public-facing materials, that you were not financially supported during college. I mean, not in a sustained way," Ethan said quickly, hand twitching over his knee. "She helped a little at the start, sure, but Michael slid another document across the table. "This is from last year, $4,850 for off-campus housing, paid directly from the trust. And here, $12,755 for a semester's tuition, again, from the same account." Ethan licked his lips. "She's exaggerating it to make me look bad." The compliance officer raised a brow without looking up. "You signed every one of these." Michael leaned forward slightly, voice lowering. "This isn't about family tension, it's about integrity. We promoted you as a self-starter, someone who came from nothing. That's not a minor branding choice. That's part of why you were selected." Ethan's throat felt like it had closed. "She always wanted credit," he muttered. Michael tapped a manila folder in front of him. "We reached out to a former professor, Avery Lynn. He responded within the hour." Ethan blinked. "You what?" "He confirmed that your mother funded your study abroad program, that you confided in him about her covering therapy and housing costs. He says you used to be grateful. He still had the emails." The silence that followed was the kind that changes air pressure. Ethan's chest rose and fell faster now. "Look, maybe I leaned into the underdog angle a little too hard, but that's what people connect with. Everyone embellishes." Michael exhaled slowly. "And everyone has a line." He closed the folder and looked directly at Ethan. "As of this morning, we're rescinding the offer." Ethan didn't move. His body had gone still in that particular way shame freezes the joints. "Can I appeal it?" he asked, barely above a whisper. Michael didn't flinch. "This isn't a termination. There's nothing to appeal. You were never fully hired." The compliance officer stood, signaling the meeting was over. Ethan pushed back his chair and rose on legs that felt too long and too hollow. His mouth opened, but no words came. He walked out of the room without a thank you. No handshake, no backward glance. The building felt colder on the way out. Or maybe it was just the sound of the glass doors clicking shut behind him. Outside, he fumbled for his phone, hands trembling. He tapped Janelle's name and brought it to his ear. 1 ring, 2, 4. Voicemail. "Hey, call me," he said, voice cracking. "Please." The line went dead. He sent out resumes. None replied. Ethan stared at the glow of his laptop screen, eyes dry and wide. It was 2:14 a.m. The only light in the apartment came from the monitor and the faint pulse of the router in the corner. 27 applications submitted. 3 cover letters tailored. 0 responses. Not even a thank you for applying. He refreshed his inbox. Again. Nothing. The silence was louder than rejection. The room smelled of old coffee and the remnants of yesterday's takeout, soy sauce and scorched plastic. His shirt was wrinkled at the collar, his jawline dotted with the beginnings of a stress breakout. He clicked through job boards with increasing urgency, changing cities, titles, keywords, anything to spark a hit. The moment the cursor paused over entry-level assistant, he caught himself. 3 weeks ago, he'd been branded a rising strategist. Now, he was begging to be noticed. And Linda, silent. She hadn't made a statement. No post, no press, no scorched earth takedown. She simply let the truth circulate, its own quiet storm. In her house, the days moved differently. Carla sat across the kitchen island, laptop open, reviewing new protective clauses she'd just added to the Holloway Trust. No future disbursements to any family member making public or private misrepresentations of origin, she read aloud. And no allowance for reconciliation without written approval of the current trustee. Linda stirred her tea without looking up. Make sure it sticks. He thought legacy was automatic. It's not. Outside, a breeze moved through the dogwoods. The garden bloomed early this year, early enough that it felt like a reminder. Ethan saw the post a few hours later. It wasn't from Linda. It was from Professor Lin. In honor of the quiet champions behind first-gen scholars, a new annual scholarship established today, name confidential. Proud to partner with donors who believe in humility and truth. Attached was a photo of Lin standing beside a plaque, the Holloway Scholar Award. The comments were glowing. Several mentioned Linda by name, despite no confirmation. Ethan didn't like the way his chest caved in when he read them. He opened Instagram. Janelle was gone, not just radio silent. Unfollowed. His DMs to her were left unseen. The photos of them at graduation. Archived. Her bio, once taken by a future exec, now simply read, figuring it out. Figuring it out. Fittering. He messaged her again. Can we talk? Please just call me for 2 minutes. You know this isn't what it looks like. No reply. He didn't even see when she blocked him. Just noticed one day her profile photo disappeared. By Thursday evening, Ethan's desperation became kinetic. He drove to Linda's house. The roads familiar but somehow foreign now. The car idled in front of the house, the same home he once called his exit strategy. The porch light was on. The blinds were drawn. A breeze moved the hanging fern just slightly. He knocked. 3 times. No answer. He rang the bell. Waited. Looked down at the welcome mat she once joked he'd inherit. Still nothing. He knocked again. Harder. Mom, he called, but his voice cracked halfway through. Can we just talk? From behind the curtain, something shifted. A silhouette. She stood there for only a second, long enough for him to know she heard. Then she turned, walked away. Ethan backed down the steps in a daze. The wind had picked up. He hadn't brought a jacket. That night, he lay on his couch, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling while the room pulsed with the blue light of the screen. His phone buzzed at 11:06 p.m., a number he didn't recognize. He answered. Mr. Holloway? Yes? This is from Federal Student Services. We're calling to inform you your co-signer has formally withdrawn their support on your loan account. What? What does that mean? It means repayment terms have changed. A revised schedule will be emailed shortly. Expect higher monthly minimums. He sat up. What? Who removed their name? We can't disclose that, sir, but we can confirm the change is legally binding. The cursor blinked once, then again, as Linda hovered over the final box on the financial portal. Remove cosigner. Confirm authorization. She clicked yes without hesitation. Across town, Ethan sat at the edge of his bed, phone limp in his hand, the morning sun drawing sharp angles across the floor. The notification from Federal Student Services still sat unopened on his lock screen, like a dare he hadn't yet accepted. He finally tapped it. The document was short and cold. Effective immediately, Linda Holloway is no longer a listed guarantor on any of your federal or private student loan agreements. Revised payment schedule to follow. His breath caught in his throat. In Linda's house, the walls felt newly still. not empty, but lighter. Carla sat at the dining table with a folder labeled Exit Clause. Final draft. Her glasses sat low on her nose as she reviewed the paperwork one last time. He made his choice, Carla said without lifting her head. Linda nodded. So I'm making mine. She reached into a smaller stack and removed a document titled Will Amended. On it were the updated beneficiaries: 40% to Chapel Hill Education Foundation, 30% to the Holloway Scholar Endowment, and the remaining 30% to Sadie, the teenage daughter of her late cousin, whom she'd mentored for 3 years. No mention of Ethan, not in footnotes, not even in the margins. Later that afternoon, Carla sent out the legal notice, a formal letter from Holloway and Byrne LLP addressed to Ethan Holloway. All further communications are to go through legal counsel. The Holloway Trust considers all financial obligations to you fulfilled. Any further claims made in public forums may be subject to legal action. It was simple, tight, and unshakable. Ethan received the letter the next morning. His response wasn't silence. It was fury. He went live on a private Instagram account, an audience of just under 3,000, most of whom had followed him since graduation. "She's trying to ruin me," he said, eyes glassy, voice rising in clipped, bitter waves. "She thinks money means control. She wasn't there when it mattered. She just wants people to clap for her." He didn't name Linda directly, but he didn't need to. What he hadn't counted on was Carla already monitoring. Within the hour, the platform flagged his live stream for harassment and violation of personal conduct policies. He was suspended from posting for 7 days. And Janelle? She was done pretending. After the live stream, Ethan opened his phone to send her a voice note. A red exclamation flashed back. Message not delivered. She had blocked him. All that remained of their online life was a faint tag in an archived story from graduation, now grayed out and expired. By Thursday, Linda received her digital trust summary. She stared at it for a long moment before printing only one page, Ethan's account history. She folded it into an envelope with a handwritten label. Final statement, Ethan Holloway. No letter, no explanation, just numbers. The next day, Ethan found it wedged in his mailbox between unpaid bills and a real estate flyer for student housing. He tore it open. Holloway Family Trust Statement, Beneficiary. Ethan J. Holloway Final Balance. $0 at the bottom. A single timestamp, account closed. Initiated by trustee. The ink smeared slightly as he gripped it too tight. The edges crumpled. It wasn't just money. It was the final key. The last thread. The unspoken safety net she'd quietly kept intact, even after the disrespect. And now, gone. His mind reeled. Who was he without that invisible cushion? Without the illusion of backing, of inheritance, of escape? He was just him. The antique mahogany dining set had been in Linda's family for 3 generations. Hand-carved legs. A faint scar across the middle from a Thanksgiving carving knife mishap. Ethan had once called dibs on it, back when he thought everything she owned was his future inventory. "I'll take that when I move out," he'd said once, casually tapping the wood like he already owned it. He never asked again. He never had to. Linda remembered the tone. This morning, a truck from the Chapel Hill Literacy Foundation backed into her driveway. The 2 movers were careful, respectful, commenting on the craftsmanship as they wrapped each chair in thick gray blankets. "Where's it going?" Linda asked softly. One of them smiled. "Community reading room. They'll host parent tutoring sessions, small group literacy brunches." Linda watched them carry it out in pieces. Not mournfully, just with finality. Inside, sunlight streamed into her now roomier dining space. A new table stood in its place. Smaller, simpler, circular. No long head of the table anymore. By noon, her kitchen was warm with the smell of citrus glaze, brewed coffee, and fresh sourdough. The brunch was intimate, just a handful of donors. Two student recipients of the Holloway Scholar Award, Carla and Professor Lynn. Conversation buzzed with purpose. Lynn raised a toast midway through the meal. To the ones who invest in people they may never meet, and to the women who do it without applause. Linda nodded once, her smile quiet but undeniable. Midway through pouring iced tea, Vanessa leaned in from across the table and whispered, "Someone's parked out front." Linda's hand paused mid-pour. She didn't look, not right away, but from the corner of her eye, she saw the silver sedan. Ethan's. He didn't knock. He didn't come to the door. He just sat there, engine off, watching through the windshield. Carla appeared beside her, arms folded. "You gave him every door," she said softly. "He chose to lock them behind you." Linda turned, looked directly at the car. She didn't wave. She didn't flinch. After a few minutes, the engine started. The car backed out slowly, then disappeared down the hill. Brunch continued. The energy didn't shift. No one asked. No one even noticed, except Vanessa. An hour later, once the guests had gone and the dishes were drying on the rack, Vanessa returned with a slim black frame tucked under her arm. "I've been holding this," she said. "Figured you'd want it now." Inside the frame was a screenshot. Ethan's graduation post, the original one with the caption, "From nothing to something. No handouts, no shortcuts." Linda stared at it for a moment, not out of pain, but something colder. Calculation. "I wanted you to see what he erased," Vanessa added, "so you'd remember what you reclaimed." Linda placed the frame in the hallway, not near the family photos. Those were gone now. In their place were letters. Handwritten thank you notes from students. Typed messages from parents. A framed quote from a scholarship recipient. "You believed in me before the world ever did." The hallway no longer told Ethan's story. It told hers. That night, as the sun settled low and golden across the trees, Linda sat near the window with a cup of mint tea. The quiet was companionable now. Not heavy, not lonely. Her phone chimed. A new email. Subject, invitation to speak, National Youth Mentorship Conference. She opened it, read it slowly. They wanted her story, not as a cautionary tale, as a model. He told the world she was nothing, so she taught the world what that looks like. The ballroom at the Durham Convention Center buzzed with low conversation and the clatter of coffee cups on saucers. The air was faintly citrusy from polished wood and fresh linen, but the energy felt charged, expectant. Linda sat backstage in a navy wrap dress, her notes folded neatly in her lap. She wasn't nervous. She had been silent for so long that speaking now didn't feel like risk. It felt like return. The event moderator gave her a subtle nod. "You're up, Miss Holloway." She stepped to the podium beneath a soft spotlight. The room quieted instantly. Rows of folding chairs were filled with counselors, educators, and social workers, people who had seen the damage of broken trust up close. Linda adjusted the mic. Then, without notes, she began. "There are stories we don't tell," she said. "Not because we're ashamed, but because we're trained to disappear, to be the safety net, the silent checkbook, the invisible backbone behind a success story that doesn't have space for us once the cameras show up." Several heads nodded. One woman in the second row reached for a tissue. "I supported someone through college. Every dollar, every form, every call when they were too scared to handle things alone. And when they stood on stage, they thanked themselves." Linda's tone never wavered. It was calm, surgical, every sentence cut deeper. "I wasn't looking for applause. I was looking for honesty." She paused, scanned the audience. "We don't talk enough about financial gaslighting, about being erased by the very people we raised. When silence becomes expectation and support becomes ammunition." There were sniffles now. One woman sobbed openly into her sleeve. A man behind her clutched a pen like it was an anchor. Linda closed her talk slowly, deliberately. "I was told I wasn't part of someone's success, so I invested in futures that knew how to say thank you." When she stepped back from the mic, the applause wasn't thunderous. It was reverent. People rose not out of politeness, but because they needed to. After the session, a young counselor approached her during the kinda, hands shaking slightly, voice hushed. Do you forgive him? Linda tilted her head, considering the question. Forgiveness is free, she said. Trust is earned, and he spent his balance. No one asked a follow-up. They didn't need to. Back at her table, Carla handed her a folder with updated legal files. These authorize future scholarship awards to be issued in your name, even posthumously, she said. Legacy should reflect truth. Linda tucked it into her bag without a word. That evening, she walked through the community center, where she'd begun mentoring 3 students from East Chapel Hill High. One of them, a lanky junior named Marcus, was practicing his scholarship essay. You really think I can win this thing? He asked. Linda smiled softly. I don't think. I know. Outside, the sun hung low, casting long orange shadows across the sidewalk. Her phone buzzed. Not a message, just an alert. Trending in North Carolina, #Holloway panel. She clicked it. Dozens of posts. Photos from the event, quotes pulled from her speech, mentions of her literacy fund, the endowment, the brunch. But not one mention of Ethan. Not one photo. Not one tag. He had scrubbed her name from his story. Now she had reclaimed it. Louder, prouder, and without him. He wanted the house. She gave it to someone who'd open the door with respect. The signature took 6 strokes of a pen. After decades of mortgage payments, repairs, and Thanksgiving dinners no one remembered to thank her for, Linda Holloway signed her name at the bottom of the deed transfer. The house was no longer hers. It belonged to someone else now. More precisely, it belonged to someone else's beginning, a local nonprofit youth shelter that would use the suburban 2-story as transitional housing for students aging out of foster care. Kids who had no one, but still deserved a door that opened, and a room with light. The executive director shook Linda's hand with both of hers. This changes lives, she whispered, voice catching in her throat. This gives them a start. Linda didn't say much. She just nodded, eyes fixed on the soft yellow shutters she had repainted herself the year Ethan turned 10. They'd always been his favorite color. The keys were now someone else's. By the following weekend, Linda had settled into a cottage-style bungalow just 5 miles away, a 1-story, white brick charmer with an ivy-wrapped porch and wildflowers that climbed up the mailbox like they belonged there. It wasn't smaller, it was right-sized. The smell of lavender oil lingered from the first cleaning, and the windows opened to birdsong and not the weight of old memories. She unpacked slowly, intentionally. No photos of Ethan went on the walls, just books, letters, and artwork from the students she mentored. 3 days later, the shelter posted a video, a walkthrough of the newly donated home. Volunteers painting bedrooms, soft green and blue. A kitchen stocked with donated groceries. A caption that read, "Because someone believed in second chances." It went viral within the local network in under 24 hours. Ethan saw it from a tagged post on his feed. No one warned him. No one softened the blow. Just a quiet clip of his childhood home being handed over, with a quote beneath it, donated by longtime community supporter Linda Holloway. His message to her was immediate. You gave my house away? No reply, he called, straight to voicemail. Linda didn't even hear the ringtone. She was in the garden, kneeling in the soil, planting basil. Beside her, a welcome mat that simply read, "Gratitude lives here." That night, Carla filed the last of the protective paperwork. An inheritance ban, drafted with precision, submitted through legal channels. Ethan would have no future claim to property, assets, or legacy. The doors closed and sealed, she told Linda, even if he apologizes. Linda glanced up from her tea. That's not what he misses. The next day, a delivery arrived, a bouquet of blue hydrangeas wrapped in brown paper, a small card tucked inside. You turned a betrayal into blueprints. Avery Professor Lynn had signed it with one word on the back, legacy. The gesture didn't bring tears. It brought a calm Linda hadn't felt in years, the kind that settles in your chest when the last loose end is finally tied. She placed the flowers beside her desk, near the window. The air smelled of earth and promise. Ethan, meanwhile, sat on his couch in a borrowed apartment. His inbox buzzed. Subject line, alumni access revoked. Misuse of donor identity. The body was blunt. Due to documented misrepresentation, your profile has been flagged. You are no longer permitted to engage in fundraising or alumni media associated with UNC. Effective immediately. He stared at the screen. His name had once carried weight. Now it carried warning labels. And Linda? She was finally unlisted. From every tie, every trace, every expectation. The air in Linda's study was still, cool, and crisp, like a balance sheet printed on premium paper. The soft tick of the wall clock was the only sound as she clicked open the final spreadsheet, one she had avoided completing until today. She titled the document, EH Ledger, Start to Finish. Column A, Date. Column B, Purpose. Column C, Amount. Column D, Source. Column E, Authorization. Every cell that followed wasn't just a transaction, it was a reminder. September 3rd, 2020, tuition deposit, UNC, $6,234, Holloway Trust. Signed by L. Holloway, December 18th, 2021. Therapy sessions 3x, $360. Personal checking, paid in full July 7th, 2022. Internship travel reimbursement, $918.12. Holloway Trust. Wire confirmed March 2nd, 2023. Security deposit, $1,450. Holloway Trust. Authorized by trustee. On and on it went. Every late-night Venmo. Every book ordered on her Prime account. Every flight, dentist bill, cab fare, and computer repair. She knew some would say she was petty, obsessive, over-detailed. But Linda wasn't documenting revenge. She was recording reality. When the final number hit the bottom line, she highlighted it in green. $173,927.44. Total support. Total silence. Total erasure. She printed one copy. No note. No explanation. Just the ledger. She folded it twice and slid it into a plain manila envelope addressed by hand. Ethan J. Holloway. Dropped it at the post office on the way back from the library. No signature required. No return address. Meanwhile, Carla filed the last of the documents into the trust archive. A formal closure statement, notarized and bound. The Holloway Trust, as it once functioned, no longer existed in form or intention. I used to think legacy was linear, Carla said, slipping the file into the cabinet. Now I see it's modular. You build what lasts and remove what rots. Linda nodded. I built the scaffold. He jumped off it. That afternoon, she sat in her new garden, the sun falling soft across the hydrangeas. A light breeze carried the scent of rosemary and fresh mulch. In her lap was a thick envelope from the Chapel Hill Education Fund, her latest donation finalized. Inside it, a certificate confirming the launch of the Robert and May Holloway Memorial Scholarship, named after her parents. The first ones who taught her that money wasn't just numbers, it was responsibility. Back inside, her phone buzzed. Ethan, again. He'd been calling sporadically since the video about the house went viral. No messages, just calls, as if the sound of her voice might still open a door. She didn't answer. She didn't even block him manually. She had the line preset through her service provider. Auto block for all unsaved numbers, originating from his last 3 known accounts. She stood, stretched, and walked to the shelf beside her desk. There, beside a framed photo of her parents and a ceramic bowl filled with handwritten notes from scholarship recipients, was the checkbook. The final one she'd used to manage the trust. She flipped to the last page. The carbon copy was still visible. Pay to the Order of Holloway Literacy Endowment amount. Final balance transfer, $47,229.88. Memo closure. She tore out the stub, slid it into a frame, and placed it directly above her desk. Not as a trophy, but as a timestamp. Legacy cleared. With clarity. Outside, the sky turned amber over her garden. The wind slowed, and light moved across the porch like a brushstroke. Linda stood at the threshold, teacup in hand, and watched the sun set over her new home, her real home. No shadows behind her, no footsteps to listen for. Just silence. And peace. The ballroom shimmered beneath rows of low-hung pendant lights. Tables were dressed in crisp ivory linen, polished silverware gleaming beneath flickers of candlelight. Laughter bubbled here and there, polite, tempered, but there was a buzz under it all, a kind of reverence. Linda stood just off stage, tucked behind a curtain thick with decades of moth-proofing and quiet anticipation. She wore a deep plum suit with clean lines, a silver pin at her collar that had belonged to her mother. She didn't fidget, she didn't glance at her notes. She didn't need to. "Ready?" Carla asked softly beside her, adjusting her glasses and smoothing her blouse. Linda nodded once. Carla stepped out first, walking across the stage with the calm, practiced grace of a woman used to holding the line. She stood at the podium and waited for the room to settle. Then she leaned slightly forward and smiled. "For most of her life," Carla began, "my sister has worked behind the curtain, as a mother, a donor, a mentor, a quiet architect of other people's futures." The room fell quiet. "She's paid the bills no one thanked her for, built ladders, others pulled up behind them. And now, finally, she's being seen." There was a pause. And then softly, "Tonight we move the curtain." Applause rose, not thunderous, but warm and wide, like the glow of sunrise on a cold morning. Linda stepped onto the stage as Carla moved aside, their hands brushing briefly in passing. Linda didn't speak immediately. She let the room breathe. She looked out across the tables, not for approval, not for recognition, but for connection. "I used to think love was something you showed quietly," she began. "That showing up meant stepping back, that giving meant disappearing." A soft rustle of napkins. One woman in the third row reached for a tissue. "I supported someone through every step of their education. Every rent check, every tuition bill, every unspoken panic attack. And when they stood on stage to celebrate their independence, I was not invited, not mentioned, not even remembered. No names, no spite, just clarity." But the story didn't end there, because instead of standing in that shadow, I built something better. I reinvested in students who wanted guidance, in programs that elevate the unheard, and in futures that understand the price of silence. The silence in the room now wasn't heavy. It was holy. Linda smiled gently. "Gratitude isn't a performance, it's a posture. And tonight I accept this honor, not as a reward, but as a reminder that legacy is a choice." She stepped back. A full standing ovation followed, slow to rise, but unstoppable once it started. At the edge of the stage, Professor Lin wiped his glasses with a handkerchief. As she passed him, he leaned in. "That," he whispered, "was what legacy sounds like." Back at her table, a small envelope waited, her honorarium for the evening. Linda opened it quietly, then slid it across to one of the event organizers. "Please redirect this to the youth shelter on Oak Ridge," she said. "Their dining room needs a new table." The woman blinked, stunned. "You sure? I've already eaten," Linda said. As the evening wound down, guests trickled out in warm clusters. A woman in a cobalt blazer approached, clipboard pressed to her chest. "Miss Holloway," she said, tentative but energized. "I'm with the National Youth Literacy Fund. We've been following your work." Linda tilted her head slightly, listening. "We're forming a national platform, a permanent endowment. We'd like to ask if you'd consider founding it." The ballroom lights dimmed further, casting long golden streaks across the floor. Linda didn't answer right away. She just smiled. A knowing kind of smile, like she already knew the shape of the next door opening. He said she wasn't part of his success, so she created hers. Linda signed the last line of the endowment paperwork with a black ink fountain pen, the kind her father once used when balancing their books at the kitchen table. The documents were thick, embossed, and bound for permanence, just like the legacy they carried. The Holloway Literacy Endowment. Fully funded, fully operational, fully hers. She slid the signed papers back across the polished wood conference table. No hesitation, no second thoughts. "Done," she said. The foundation's attorney smiled. "Congratulations, Miss Holloway. Your work will now outlive all of us." Linda nodded, then gathered her coat. She didn't linger for champagne or applause. Her success didn't need a toast, it needed a future. Outside, the morning air was brisk and sharp, carrying the clean scent of winter jasmine from a nearby planter. She took the long way to the youth shelter on Oak Ridge Drive, the sidewalk crackling with dry leaves under her boots. By the time she arrived, students and mentors had gathered beneath a white tent. A modest wooden stage stood at one end of the courtyard. The new sign had just been unveiled. The Holloway House for Literacy and Leadership. She didn't cry, she just breathed. Deep and even, like the moment was settling inside her bones. Carla stood beside her in a tailored blazer, holding a folder with the final donor records. Professor Lin waved from the opposite end of the courtyard, surrounded by teens holding fresh journals and tote bags with the endowment's logo. And then there was Vanessa, camera in hand, weaving between clusters of volunteers and kids. She found Linda in her lens and captured her mid-laugh, mid-light, surrounded but centered. Click. "This is what family looks like," Vanessa said, stepping forward to show her the photo. Linda studied it for a moment. No filters, no retakes, just truth. The kind Ethan had spent years editing out. When she turned, the event director handed her a framed dedication letter. In honor of Linda Holloway, who gave without expecting, taught without demanding, and left no hand unreached. Linda held it against her chest for a moment, then passed it gently to Carla. "Would you hang it in the hallway at the shelter?" "Of course," Carla said. "Next to the bookshelf." The rest of the afternoon moved like a mural in motion. Kids reading under trees, donors, chatting over cider, the smell of warm bread from the pop-up bakery truck Vanessa had helped coordinate. No one asked about Ethan. No one mentioned what she'd lost, only what she'd given. As the sky turned honey gold, Linda hugged the last student goodbye and stepped off the courtyard stage. Her heels clicked against the cement in a rhythm that felt like punctuation, the closing sentence of a story no one else got to rewrite. She chose to walk home. The wind had softened, rustling the magnolias as she passed. Her home came into view, modest and full of intention, lights on in the front window. A teacup waiting on the porch table. She opened the garden gate and paused. A new bronze plaque had been mounted on the post, just beneath the lantern. "Gratitude is louder than silence." She didn't need to know who placed it. She simply touched the corner with her fingertips, like signing something final. As she reached her front step, her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She didn't check it. She didn't need to. The last time she looked, Ethan's number was still blocked. She sat on her porch swing, cupped the still warm mug in her hands, and watched the wind thread through the trees. He had once told her she wasn't part of his story, and now she had written one he couldn't even touch.